Okay, welcome everybody. We're here with a very special guest. We have Roxrite from the Renegades and Squadron and Redbull, one of the Red Bull All Stars. Is that the term that they use?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Real pleasure to have you. And yeah, thanks for taking the time to do this.
yeah. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to interact, have a conversation, and just chop it up about breaking and everything.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Cool.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Um, yeah, to start off, why don't you just give people a little like background on who you are and how you got into dance and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah. For those that don't know, my real name is Omar Delgado. My dance name is Roxrite, and it was given to me by my mentor that I met in '96. He gave me the name in '96. I met him in the fall of '95, and then in '96 I got down in his crew, and then he gave me the name Roxrite. So Roxrite, for those that don't know, it's a terminology that is used in hip hop, and it just means to rock right, to represent right. So it's a term that has existed through MCs, but he gave it to me as a b-boy, so to me it meant a lot.
Who
So
was this,
that's
by the
my
way?
name. Ground Level. His name is
Okay,
Ground Level, and
cool, cool.
yeah, he's the creator of my first crew called Sub Four Straight Up B-Boys. But yeah, that's how those are my names. That's how I got my name. But my breaking journey began before I met him. I started breaking in January of '95. Um, the fall of '94, I started junior high in seventh grade, and a bunch of kids I went to school with. We went to a school dance, and they were just dancing.
Hmm.
They just opened up the cipher and started breaking. And watching that, it really got me interested into breaking, but I didn't try it yet. And then I actually saw Ground Level and his crew come and do a showcase at the school in January of '95. And the moment I saw them break, me and my friends went home and we started breaking on that day. So that was that was my beginning. We went to his house, practiced in the living room for hours, just tried whatever we could. And
Yeah,
yeah, from there on, it was just picked up breaking, just basically being a visual learner, just from
right,
watching, because you couldn't ask questions, you couldn't, and people back then didn't know how to teach, so it was just brand new.
right,
Almost felt as if we found something that nobody else knew about, because at that time in the '90s, breaking was reemerging in the suburban communities of Northern California, and for many years it had faded away right from the '80s, so
right.
it was new. And yeah, it was just this whole new wave of kids breaking at
Hmm.
school dances, town dances, just
Right.
everywhere.
What were some of the ways that you like got exposed to it other than people coming and doing shows and stuff like that when you were starting out? Because like kids
Yeah.
nowadays they have resources like YouTube and all these
Mm.
videos are online and they have tutorials, they have competitions, they have like interviews and discussion panels, and they have like all these things that are all available. But you started in a different era
Yeah.
than that. Yeah.
Yeah, the accessibility now is crazy,
Hmm.
but it's a good thing, right, for the
Hmm.
future. The For me, when I started, I knew what breaking was. I had seen it before when I was
Hmm.
young, when I was a little kid in Mexico before I moved to America. I had seen kids breaking, but I wasn't. I had known what it was. It's like there's like a memory of somebody doing something, but you don't really know what it was.
Hmm.
Uh, and my older brother, I remember seeing him try to do a backspin in the living room as a kid. And then in the '90s, when I moved to the US, going into the '90s, he was bumping a lot of hip hop and stuff because he was a teenager, older than me, 7 years older. So he was just constantly playing music. So through that, I started seeing it in music videos here and there,
Right.
and I would sort of know about it, but I didn't know what it was called. I didn't really know much about it, so I went to junior high that year, and there was one kid that came from Sacramento, uh, and he was doing windmills. He would do head spins, uh, and he's the one that would break in school breaks. But we would just kind of, okay, that's breaking, right? That's when we started to somewhat understand or hear about it more. And then that's when I saw the other kids that were in my grade, because he was older, they were breaking at the dances. So we'd go to school dance and they would start breaking. And then from there on, I saw my friend who's like a cousin to me. He was breaking, and then his friends were breaking. So it was just a bunch of 10, 12, 13-year-old kids that were getting inspired by other people around them, and
Right,
just
right,
it was like this new wave
right,
of the cool, right, of something new and unique for a young crowd
right.
that didn't have many resources or outlets
Hmm.
to express themselves at that time where I grew up. So breaking was that avenue, I think, for a lot of them without realizing it, because when you're young, you're not consciously aware of your social surroundings, right? And you don't think of those things till you age. So for me now, I can explain it that way now, but back then it was like, oh, that's tight, that's cool. What is
Yeah,
that? And it just draws you in.
yeah, cool. Can you like take us a little further on in your journey through breaking, like
Yeah,
as you got older and more experienced and getting into some of these other crews that you're in now, or some of the
yeah.
ones that you were in before?
I mean, yeah, with like you're saying, how if we go back to those times, finding crews and building with people was way different because it was intimidating. I had like a group of friends, but we weren't an official crew.
Hmm.
So we went and battled these high school kids, and their crew was called Sub Four, which means straight up b-boys, four elements of hip hop. Crazy ass name. And they were that's the ground levels crew, and they were just way more advanced. So that was it was you would have to go out, put your name on the line, and we battled them a bunch of rounds, and they smoked the shit out of us, and
Yeah.
that's how you learn. But that was our way to get out. That was our way of learning as well and connecting with people. And through that, the battling is what I felt really kind of started putting my name out there and getting recognized or acknowledged by my peers or people in my community, right? That's how my name started getting out, and that's how I was able to interact and connect with these people.
Hmm.
And it worked that way outside of where I grew up, right? Because where I grew up is a small town in Northern California.
Hmm.
The towns, there's two towns. One's called Hillsburg, California, and that's where I started breaking. There was like around 10,000 people that lived there. That was the population. And then the other town where all the bigger crews and so forth and all them were from, that was Windsor. And there are only like 25,000. And then Santa Rosa had a whole bunch of different crews. And that's the biggest city in Sonoma County. And that's about an hour north of San Francisco. So that the way we built up there was, we kind of built our names through there. And from there on, it led to being recognized by the guys from the city, from Frisco, Renegades started noticing me in '99 at an event called Break Mania.
Hmm.
And they had been seeing me win a few battles prior to that in summer of '98 when I started competing in Sacramento and stuff. Some of the members would be checking out these events, and they noticed that this kid was battling everybody, right? So they saw something in me that they felt could help the crew and the legacy of Renegades keep going. So in 2000 at B-Boy Summit, I was battling two people in a cipher for 30 minutes. And the crew leader, Politics, had never seen somebody that young battle these two dudes. And just, basically, I everybody's consensus was that I beat them. And he came up to me afterwards and asked me if I'd be down to, start networking or connecting with them to check out what it would be like to be down with Renegades.
Yeah.
And that time I was like, no, I'm cool because my crew was still very active.
Yeah.
And I didn't really look into it more. But as I got closer to graduating high school, everybody started changing directions in what they were doing and the
Right.
passion that they had for breaking. So it led me into linking up with them, and that's when I connected with Wicked, Politics, Manny Styles, Golden Child, OJ, rest in peace, Epic, and me and Grand Level got down with them in 2000, and that's when that was the beginning of this whole new chapter in my life for me because I had seen them, watching Radiotron,
Hmm.
watching Wicked, Jazzy J, and all the crew, Sway, Manny Styles, all these guys just kill it throughout the years.
Hmm.
It felt like that was, like it's like if I got drafted by the Niners.
Right. Right.
That's what it felt like to me. So that was my journey in the meeting with Renegades. Uh, I've been fortunate enough to connect with many different generations and groups of people that represent not just my region but the whole country. And
Hmm.
in 2006, I linked up with Speedy and Squid, and this was through Kid David because Kid David had met them in 2004 at an event called Spin Factor that happened in the East Coast.
Yeah.
And so David knew them, and that's how we started linking up and we started doing battles together. And that ended up that was the foundation of what became the Squadron.
Hmm.
Because Max was down with Unique Styles, Speedy and Squid are Unique Styles. Me and David are Renegades. And then we connect with Max in 2006. We meet him, then we win our spot into the bboy world team, me and David at Outbreak. Then Max starts putting us on for battles. And then you start to see this chemistry build between Unique Styles, Renegades, and then you have Masters of Mayhem, uh, Mayhem 180 guys, Beast Mode, and then you got Luigi. All these guys are there at the beginning, and also Kevo. And
Hmm.
yeah, it just kind of became this melting pot of visions and also appreciation for one another's style and respect for each other's approach to the dance. Even though we came from different regions and represented different regional styles, we still appreciated each other's approach.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was how we created Squadron, which became to me was like the beginning of a new phase in breaking.
Hmm.
And what we did, I felt it was just, I don't think that you had that many people from all over the country come together like that and unite
Hmm.
as one unit. You know, that it was done through regions, I felt before, but not to the degree that we did it in at
Right.
that time.
It seems like it happened sort of very naturally and not
Yeah.
like a, hey, let's make a super crew kind of thing. It's like a naturally formed
Yeah.
super crew. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
It's not really a super crew because it's
the funny
just like,
thing, yeah, it's because there has to be some kind of vibe and kind of
yeah,
chemistry. You
yeah,
can't, there is times when people team up and you can see the energy and the vibe, you know, but
yeah, yeah.
the funny thing is that I judged the prime that they won in 2003. That was like the first big win
Oh, yeah.
for Unique Styles. So those guys, you know, we had to see. I didn't fully like officially like kick it with them or anything like that, but I just had met them,
Hmm.
and they always just kept the respect and showed my respect towards me. And then when Kid David, you know, became under my crew and under basically under me and started helping him, he ended up connecting with them, and that's what bonded everybody. And
Yeah, cool.
you know, it's a trip.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that, you and Kid David? Because I remember like
Yeah.
when I first started seeing like learning about him, yeah, it was
Hmm.
always like the two of you as like a duo. You're doing a 2-on-2 here, 2-on-2 there, and like break disciples and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah, definitely.
yeah, can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, Kid David, I had heard about him through one of my friends.
Hmm.
He used to practice with me a lot. His name's Eric,
Hmm.
and he would go and practice in different areas in Northern California. So Kid David's from Marin County, and I'm from Sonoma County, which is they're next to each other. One's right next to the city, and the one's the next county over.
Right.
So he lived in Marin, and my friend would go there, and he kept telling me about this kid, David. Oh, there's this one kid, you got to see him break. You got to see him break. And so that's how I learned about him. And then I finally saw him at prom 2003 battling a bunch of kids in the cipher. And he basically took everybody out. Then this adult guy called him out. And he battled them too, you know.
Yeah.
But it was just interesting to see that, like, to see such a young, hungry kid developing at that time. And he ended up getting down with Renegades in '04. And that's when he started kind of just learning the style and the approach from the crew, different members that were active at the time. And then 2000, yeah, the end of 2004, going into 2005, that's when I started building with him a lot more and
Hmm.
really just, you know, practicing with him almost every day. I would drive to his house, he would drive to my house. And we would just build. And I was just, you know, as he was way younger than me, but it was at that time, it's almost for my career and my approach at the time, I felt like he was like a breath of fresh air and rejuvenated me to want to push harder. So even though I was the elder and I was the one that was establishing himself on the international side, I was also still older already. And on one side is a lot of people were quitting at that time during my age. So he was like this new young hungry cat that had mad fire, and all I could do is just give him knowledge and share with
Hmm.
him information and try to get him to maybe see something that I lacked, or maybe just to understand the dance for what it was. And yeah, I mean he made me proud. I mean what he did was, you know, he became his own. And
Hmm.
that's what, to me as a elder who, you know, guided him, it's rewarding to see. And it's you appreciate that type of development and growth in somebody, because it means that they believed in what you were teaching. And
Right.
it goes to show that he went on to carry a lineage and represent a legacy of a crew
Hmm.
that was deeper than just me and him.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that was the that's how we met, that's how we connected, and just taking him, traveling with him all over the place and battling next to him was always
Hmm.
just I learned from him too in a way, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
of
like
course.
it was an exchange. But yeah, it was that was it's been a long time.
Yeah, that's one thing that uh, over the past while, like doing this and talking to a lot of people, like the idea of just like mentorship and how important that is. Having
Hmm.
someone not necessarily like teaching you what to do and telling you what to do, but
Hmm.
like guide, like you said, you guided him and you gave him your experience as someone who's been doing it longer and just an older person.
Hmm.
Yeah, like, and they can take it or leave it, but it's up to them to kind of like create whatever they want with that knowledge. And like you said, he ended up coming into his own and becoming his own unique dancer with the knowledge that you gave him, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and the
Yeah, that's
guidance.
true. Yeah, it's important. I think, it's interesting because we're at a point where mentorship is becoming a business
Mm.
and is becoming a way of sourcing income from dance, right? So it's interesting how, because my mentor's ground level, it was on some straight the methods of old hip hop ways, right? It's like each one teach one, passing down knowledge. He was Zulu Cap since '93, and
Mm-hmm.
he had already like this approach of having style, being fresh, understanding fashion, understanding that this is not just moves. He
Mm-hmm.
was already putting me on game as to that you got to use power moves as steps and not actual moves. So it's like he already had like this approach, philosophy that was really raw at the time. I mean, to this day, that mindset sticks. It's a
Mm-hmm.
timeless approach and understanding to hip hop and breaking.
Mm-hmm.
So his knowledge is huge for me. Um, and he basically, yeah, he helped basically pave way for me. And then with Gremlin, I met Grims in '99, and then I started kind of working with him more and kind of just being under him from I think it was 2002 and on till about 2000. Like I started building him a lot. I mean, I always still have a lot of love and respect for him, no matter what. But the years that I studied with him the most and hung and worked with a lot before he moved to LA was like 2002 till around 2004 or five. But yeah, those guys went out of their way because they saw something in me, and they went on to share that. And that's just the way it was, right? And now with David, it was the same thing. He was just the one student I really sat down and had the time to give that, but also he was willing to learn it and he was
Mm-hmm.
willing to listen. And that's the biggest thing I think in today's scene that I every now and then you'll see people do it. Obviously, the people blossom and they grow into themselves, and this thing happens. But yeah, it's not as common because
Mm-hmm.
back then you can see there's a lot of different individuals from different crews that carried on certain legacies, right? And approaches. Whereas now it's the internet is packaging everything, and everybody's getting packaged uh through wins and success in competitions, right? But that's the difference I feel now, and it makes it interesting to see where we're at now with that.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting to see how the dance evolves and
Yeah.
just the business side of it too, because that's something
Hmm.
that's really changed. And
For sure.
maybe we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I okay. So I wanted to talk a bit about um, your your views on just like practice.
Hmm.
And this is something that just recently has kind of become more and more interesting. And like, I think there's a lot of people that, especially younger kids or just people who, I don't know, they kind of approach practice as like, oh yeah, just go and yeah, I'll just do some stuff, and
Hmm.
maybe that's good for their goals, but some people they can get like frustrated. Oh, I'm not getting where I want to be, and you know,
Yeah.
the more you get into it, you learn like, oh, you actually have to kind of like be efficient with practice and that kind of thing
Yeah.
if you want to get better, right?
Yeah.
So maybe can you talk a little about just your approach to practice? Do you just like wing it, or do you have like things
No,
specifically?
I can give you different. You see, the thing is, for me to have balance in that approach,
Mm-hmm.
and because of the time I started, it's a little different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not that I have to force myself to do certain things. It's more,
Yeah.
do I feel like doing those things?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's about feeling for me a lot of the time. So when I was younger and I first started, I would say the first 4 years, first 5 years, it was hard practices, daily practices, a lot of hours,
Mm-hmm.
um, to the point where I developed movement and enough to where I can do it from wherever I wanted and whenever I wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the development phase of my breaking because I don't think practice is meant to be done one way. Sorry about
Yeah.
that. I don't think practice is meant to be done one way that works forever because eventually you'll burn out. This thing's
Yeah.
about feeling still, right? We're not like a sport where you go and throw a ball through a hole every day.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what it is. This is the thing about music expression, feeling. So if you don't if you're not breaking that way, eventually you'll burn out or your style will just fade because you're basing it just on the moves that are hot.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, throughout the years, I've learned that first is after those 5 years that I developed, I burnt out. I had 2 years of really bad practicing, like blockade, mental block, where I was just stuck. I didn't know what to do. I had influence from this side. These people telling me to do this, and I just got lost in myself. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, my practices were trash. I was doing horrible. I couldn't even do moves. I would go to practice and just be sitting there dumbfounded,
Oh.
like thinking. And it was because there was just a lot of information being given to me, and also I just kind of lost the feeling of that. Right, I was trying to be forceful still, where I was trying to force myself to go to practice for hours instead of thinking about breaking, developing things in my mind, appreciating like really like the aesthetics, the approach, the music, the fashion, everything that goes with hip hop. It's almost like I let that go for a few years mentally, and I wasn't in it like that. Even though I felt like I could, I just when I go to practice, things weren't really coming through. And then I found that itch again, and that was when I decided to go back to what I wanted to do, the things that moved me. So I had all this information and knowledge that was being handed to me,
Yeah.
but that helped as well. It helped define me and helped me create certain things after that. But it was because I implemented it to the way that I moved.
Mm-hmm.
And in practice, it was more about, yeah, I went back to that feeling, but now it was like a new feeling because I went and like found music that moved me. I wasn't just breaking to the music that was being played at every jam and every battle that I did was the same beats. And not to take away from the traditional breaks that were being played at the time, but just like any music, when you hear it all the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're gonna lose what it is. You're gonna lose the feeling that it gives you. It's gonna give you that high that first few times that you hear it or however many times, but after a while it gets played out. So practice is similar to that to me because with music, my practice developed better with understanding and knowing that I wanted to practice, like being aware that like, oh, I feel like breaking today, I'm gonna go break. It was just making that effort and constantly pushing and realizing that music had a bigger role in my dance than I did in the past, right? Those first 5 years, it was like militant, almost like day
Mm-hmm.
five, 4 hours, 3, 4, 5 hours practicing. And then after that development, it's like, okay, beyond the moves and the style that you're getting, then you get stuck, then comes music, and then I start to go back to that feeling and get re-inspired. But when you're competing, definitely you want to be more consistent. Um, you want to have somewhat a regimen
Mm-hmm.
of whether it's working out, uh, sparring, studying footage in practice. So practice is not just doing the moves, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Practice is also the mental game and understanding your abilities and what you lack, what you miss, what you forgot in the last battle, what moves you could have threw in after this move. Like you have to study yourself if you're going to battle in the competition realm beyond just practicing the moves every day. You have
Yeah.
to be kind of somewhat, you almost want to step out of yourself to see yourself. And because when you record yourself, you're able to do that.
Yeah.
So there's that way of practicing, and I feel that's the best way when you're competing because you're able to be more conscious, more aware of what your movements are,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're going to have to deliver them to an audience, to a pair of judges, to your competitor. So I feel like that would help. And that's another way of practice, right? So I use all these ways. That's the thing. I don't stick to one way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I have this phase where I'm just going through exploration where I just play music that I like and I just explore. No structure,
Hmm.
no defined thing like, oh, I need to do 10 flares today. I need to do 590s today.
Yeah,
You know, it's free for all. I'm exploring, playing with ideas.
yeah. Hmm.
And that's where I'm at right now, right? That's my phase right now. I'm exploring this new way of connecting my moves, finding new movement, challenging myself to do things that I haven't done in the past, or things that are new to me, and
Yeah.
it's been amazing. So I'm enjoying it, and yeah, there's many practice methods, not just
Yeah,
one.
I think that's really important for people to understand, like, because breaking is so varied, right? I think that's one of the things that makes it so beautiful and so fun, like long term, is there's
Yeah,
so much to learn, so much variety, and like there's different ways to approach it. You can do competitions, or you can just do it for fun. You can do it for like fitness. You can do it for,
hmm
some people like do it for, I don't know, like it's almost like meditation to them. It's just like, all right, I'm just
yeah.
gonna let go and do this thing.
It's a moment of disconnection from whatever stresses you might have
Yeah,
as well,
exactly,
right? You
right.
can unplug from everything, and this is the one moment where you get to just not think about nothing and be free.
Yeah, so I think it's important, like you said, to have those different approaches when you practice, and different varied kinds of practices.
hmm
um yeah, yeah, I'm really glad that that came up.
Yeah, man, definitely. I think the last part of practice would be, well, they don't, nobody does it anymore as much. It's really rare. But just going down to a club and getting down.
Yeah, yeah.
That's that was, for me when I was younger, it was going to a party and breaking, or
Hmm.
going to a foreign, not foreign, but like a school dance that wasn't in my school district, right?
Hmm.
And finding that there was other breakers there, and you'd go get down, and that was a form of practice as well, because
Yeah,
you're testing your moves out,
yeah, yeah,
these spots in an environment that is not
yeah.
made for breaking, basically.
Well, I think like to like you said, having that variety, it's important, because like some people can get so fixated on certain things, and like maybe that's fine for a certain amount of time. Like if this is a real
hmm
issue with whatever you want to improve, like you can zone in on it. But I
hmm
think it's really important to kind of like, because breaking is so varied in all of its forms, like you gotta have a mix of all these things. You gotta take time
Yeah,
to just explore, because like creativity is a part of it, right? So
yeah,
you gotta have time to do that. You gotta have time to like zero in on something, like I don't know, you want to get 90s, but it's like a very specific move, and so you gotta like
yeah,
drill it, or something like, or a footwork step, or whatever,
yeah,
or piecing together things. It's like different kinds of practice will help with those different things.
definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, the next thing that, yeah, I want to, I mean, I guess it kind of leads into this,
hmm
is your infamous like road to 100 wins.
hmm
And I kind of just want to talk about that in general, and just the idea of like setting goals for yourself too.
hmm
So if you
Yeah.
could speak about
I
that.
mean, yeah, definitely. I think being goal oriented and breaking is difficult because I mean, now you can have more structure, right? Now we have a circuit of events. We have an ecosystem that is has kind of built itself, and we have consistency in the community. But yeah, I used that coming up in the time I came up in, it was just I used competitions and battles as somewhat uh, a place to get to,
Hmm.
or a place to like test myself out, and it was almost like, oh, my goal is to win Pro-Am, my goal is to win UKB World Champs, my goal is to win Rebel BC, right? It's like you have these goals, and you set these almost like little, yeah, they're goals basically that you're trying to get to, and
Hmm.
championships you want to accomplish, or maybe people you want to battle. Those were the things that started it and kind of pushed me. But also the idea of 100 victories is an idea that goes back to pre-breaking.
Hmm.
So the idea of winning 100 came because uh, there was a Seattle Seahawk wide receiver named Steve Largent, and he was the first wide receiver in the NFL to score 100 touchdowns in his career. And I was a big ass football fan growing up as a kid. And to hear, I saw a bunch of wide receivers that was one of my favorite positions actually. So I always was like, oh, damn, he got 100 touchdowns. Like it just, it was like this groundbreaking thing. It
Yeah.
was new. It was the
Yeah.
first time it was done. And in 2002, when I started linking with Grims, he actually brought up about keeping track of your victories. how important that is and how much value that can create for yourself if you track your victories. So in 2002, I started competing in the summer of '98. So I was able to backtrace my victories pretty easily back then because there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that many anyways. So like, oh yeah, I won that battle and I won this battle and that battle. And then by 2009 comes around and I had hit like 60 something wins. And I watched this Jordan commercial with Carmelo Anthony, and he says there was like a message in it, and it was like, damn, yeah, why not? Like, I should do something that hasn't been done or go pursue something new, right? And yeah, that kind of triggered the idea to pursue 100 victories. I mean, that road to 100, it was very long.
Yeah.
At certain moments, I didn't think I was gonna reach it, and it was just uh, it was hard for sure. It was just like, oh damn! But it gave me something to keep elevating my game and my craft, right? Because to me, breaking's always been about being innovative in your approach and the way that you move and connect your moves and how you dance is important to me. I don't just want to tick boxes to win a battle. It's like has been my style. This is how I break, and this is what's gotten me to where this far. So with this approach, I want to get to that point,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that was I think the saying that I would win 100 was a push that really I think led me into this competitive career of breaking that was almost in some ways hyperextended, right? Because you don't have many people that are competing that actively at my age, and especially at the ages that I did it at. It was not like, I was in my 20s trying to win 100 tournaments. I was already going into my late 30s when I won 100, right? It was the second half of my 30s. Um, and it was definitely a challenge, but it was a journey that I felt like needed to get done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, every victory was after saying that you want to do that, it's like there's this little thing in the back of your mind like picking at you, like, yeah, you can do it, you can do it, and but I was like, maybe you're not. But it was just I don't know, I enjoyed it. It was definitely something. I'm glad I set that out, and being able to do everything I did in the process is what made it that right. It's the road to getting there is the beautiful part of doing something.
Yeah.
It's like what was that journey like? What was your journey like to win your first battle? What was it that what
Right.
were the obstacles? And
Right.
if I were to tell you all the obstacles that came in the way at moments when I felt like I wasn't gonna do it, it was just life hits. And I'm also wasn't the most competitive active guy either, even though I was pursuing 100. In today's competitive breaking, I have spoken to many competitors and dancers, and a lot of them enter up to 20 battles a year, 20 something battles a year. That's a lot. I never did more than 13. So, if I'm gonna do 22 battles and I win five, okay, that's cool. But I just played myself 17 other times. Like for me, it's always been about feeling. So to enter 13 battles max in a year for me, on my most active year, even in my prime, I was very selective to choose like, okay, I'll battle this month or that month, or maybe I would skip 3 months, but I would train those 3 months, and maybe I would do three battles in a row and win one of them or two of them. But there was targets, right? There was things that I was pursuing, and I used the competitive side of breaking as an outlet, but also it was like my way to establish myself, and I feel that it would create different type of value for the community, even though not everybody's into that. It's not for everybody, but it creates a different type of appreciation and recognition on a social scale because you're putting a statistic behind a dance that doesn't have statistics. So when you start adding numbers and victories and losses and all that, that you create a different type of recognition for what we do because a lot of people watch sports. They're not necessarily into the sport, but they know that number one in college is playing number two, and they're both undefeated. Like,
Yeah.
I want to watch this. Who's gonna win? Right. So
Yeah.
it's like it's like boxers. When you have undefeated boxers fight each other, people want to see. They don't know boxing. A lot of
Yeah.
people, it's not like they follow it religiously. They just heard that, oh, then they start studying the guy. Then they find out who he is. Like, oh, damn, that's the story. And he's
Mm-hmm.
undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then this guy's undefeated too. Let me find out his story, right? You create a different type of words for the community.
Yeah.
But again, it's not for everybody. But that's really the idea of winning 100 and keeping statistics within the dance.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that last point that you made, the the story too. Like I think that's something that's so important that, in my opinion, it's something that like breaking kind of lacks.
For
That
sure.
that there needs to be more things of like, 'cause I know that Red Bull does this a lot too with like trying to give background on people
Hmm.
and things like that, or some event or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think like just it's like a human thing. You know, we like stories. We, even if there's
Hmm.
no story, we'll create a story out of it. You know, so it's like, oh,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Roxrite's like going for 100 wins, and then that's like, it's not just a number. It's not just a statistic. It's something to follow in like this
Mm.
journey and this story that you go through. And it's like,
Yeah.
it almost reminds me of like, you know, you're talking about boxing and the
Hmm.
undefeated person against the undefeated person, and like I'm a huge pro wrestling fan, and like
Hmm.
especially like US style pro wrestling is like they craft these stories and they
Yeah,
plan them out, and it's like that's a big appeal because
for
like,
sure.
you know, it's just it's like it's all fake, right? But the
Yeah.
important part is like this story to follow, and that's what's
Yeah.
interesting about it,
That's
and
what
the
people
stories that
fall in
they
love
tell.
with. Is the
Exactly,
stories
right?
that they tell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
um
but that's also why people connect to athletes, right?
yeah,
Because there might be something in their story that you can relate to.
yeah,
And I think and breaking is not properly done.
yeah, yeah. So hopefully that's what these interviews will
Hopefully we
help
can
do.
venture into that world, right?
Yeah, yeah. We had just been talking about the road to 100, but
Mhm.
I was I was kind of curious about your life as a professional dancer, and kind of
Hmm.
how that's been, and maybe if you get the chance to kind of take us through maybe an average day of the life of a Red Bull BC1 All Star.
Yeah, I mean, well, sometimes you do nothing.
Yeah,
Sometimes you're just
yeah,
completely chilling, you know.
yeah.
Sometimes you just sit around training, developing. But I'll give you an example for today, right? So a typical busy, actual like on schedule when things kick off like a tour date. Um, you know, call time flight would be like 7 a.m. Uh, get to the airport like at 6 in the morning. Uh, you know, have everything already checked in. Then that's the beginning of the journey. And then it would be like today I get here, I do some stuff with either the team that's throwing the event, either it might be interviews, might be a photo shoot, might be some kind of content with video, um, dance content. I mean, and then tomorrow we got a like 10 a.m. call time, and then we got to go to the venue, kind of just get a scope for things because this is going to be something televised. Then on Saturday, I'm catching a flight to Texas where I get there, go straight to the venue, do a panel discussion, check into the hotel. Next day, I'm judging prelims, uh, doing showcase, doing interviews, doing content, all at the gym. So you're looking like days can be very busy, but within that, it sounds really. I think the hardest part is the traveling part. That's like the part where I think that's the most tiring aspect of it, right? Because once you're there, you got breathing room, you got time to like take your time, and not everything is so like stacked and rushed. It's like okay, you know, like tomorrow when we go, we got time, so we get there to the venue, we get to relax a bit, chill, kind of scope things out. It's not like a stressful thing, but it is when it comes to like the idea of like having to get on a plane every couple of days. That's what wears you down a bit, you know. And I think as a professional, you know, I mean, for me, I quit my day job at 26, so or my day jobs, my side work that I was doing to pursue breaking full time. So for me, I really appreciate this and appreciate what I do because I knew that where I came from to get to where I got to, I knew I know that this is like a reward for my life and what I've done, you know. So I really enjoy doing what I do. Um, and yeah, it's you work for yourself, so it's an amazing experience and being able to have a sponsor like Red Bull. You know, all they've done is really given me the opportunity to pursue my talent and my abilities at the highest level that I can. And you know that's there's nothing like it. You know, it's really amazing to be able to continue to do what I love at the level that I'm doing it at, and to be able to keep myself enjoying dancing and being creative with it still through all these opportunities and being able to have that freedom to do that has been amazing. But
Yeah,
yeah, as a professional, it's you know you got to be on it, you got to be smart. It's not just about moves. you really have to learn the other things of the dance. Also, how you got to be able to know how to talk to people. You got to also know how to prepare your stuff that you need to present. Come up with ideas, deliver the ideas. I mean, there's so much stuff that comes behind it, because the All Stars when it was an idea. It wasn't like, oh, let's just do this. It was like there was an idea. We sat down, we wrote it down, and Yalda and Thomas from Barabia helped us present this. So it's a network of people that help that as well. But to create something like this, right, or a profession of breaking, like it's not your talent's gonna get you there, but you have to also know how to manage yourself outside of dance, uh, and know how to deal with people and all these other things and be responsive and all these things that uh, as they say, you gotta be your professionalism. You gotta level up on your professionalism. You gotta be professional.
Yeah,
So
for
there's a lot
sure.
of things that go behind it.
Hmm. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want to talk about yeah, just the idea of doing your passion as a job and like balancing that kind of thing
Mhm.
of uh, doing it as work, but also trying to keep it still fun and enjoyable as your the thing that you love, because that can
Yeah,
happen a lot when people take on their passion as a job. It can start to feel like a job and less like art or whatever you
yeah,
however you whatever you do.
yeah. You get burnt out.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, with breaking as the thing that's become the job. The balance of dance and creativity and enjoyment and fulfilling that feeling of what it was to you before this was something that you have to rely on to pay your bills or your livelihood. Uh, you have to really be okay with where you're at. I think a lot of times in the competitive side of breaking, you feel like you have to be active all the time. A lot of people don't rest as much. We were constantly on the go, trying to win this battle, that battle, this battle. But as a profession, and for you have to understand that there's a time and place for that, and period. And then there's also a time and place and period for you to take care of your responsibilities. So I think to where I've gotten to and where I'm at, there was times when I missed a lot of events that I wanted to be at, but I knew that my priorities came first, certain things came first that I had to take care of, and I had to be okay with not being able to be active when I wanted to be active, because the battling is a lot of the times what we build our careers on when it comes to breaking, because that's how you build your name, that's how you establish yourself in the community, and that's how you get a lot of respect and garner all this attention to who you are, what you represent, and that's kind of how you kind of get yourself into the next position. But if once you're there, you have to find that you have to just accept where you're at. I think a lot of people get uh, wasted on the pursuit of trying to be somewhere they're not ready to be at. It's the same thing with a lot of talent. They see someone like myself, or they see somebody that's endorsed, and they want that instantly, not realizing that that takes 5, 10, 15 years of work that needs to be done prior to getting into these positions. And that's the same kind of struggle when it comes to finding the balance, because you still want to be very active and involved, but if you don't know how to separate both, you'll burn out, because wanting one thing and not being able to prep for that, you're gonna feel like burnt out. You're gonna feel tired out. You're gonna just draw a lot of energy to try and do that, and it's not gonna work. Or I mean, for me, I haven't. When I try to do that, I feel like I lost my balance a lot, and that's when I was at my worst. So.
Yeah, what you mentioned there too about just being okay with where you're at, and some people maybe they're not there yet. And I think we talked
Mhm.
about this last time, but
Mhm.
the kind of other end of people not accepting that maybe they're like past that time of being the competition b-boy or b-girl or
Yeah.
whatever, and just like passing the torch and that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
that's it's all about, yeah, just understanding, like you said, where you're at, what are your circumstances, and that kind of thing, and just being okay with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like we talked about. I think, yeah, I don't know if it was recorded or not, but the whole thing, like a boxer, right?
yeah,
It's like they don't want to call it quits,
yeah,
and I feel like that breaking is similar to that, in terms of some of us, we don't know when to step away.
yeah.
So.
It's a fine line of like you want to keep pushing yourself, but it's I don't know. It's just like being honest with yourself, right?
Hmm.
Is your Can you
Yeah.
still do it? Is your body still doing able to
Is your
do these
body still
things?
holding up? Can you do
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing with like I think breaking and say like combat sports or anything physical, like any major sports, uh,
Hmm.
your body just kind of like wears away naturally, even if you don't do
Yeah, it
this
gives
stuff.
away.
Like yeah,
Yeah, you lose flexibility. You can't do certain moves.
yeah.
I mean, if you're able to sustain that and keep up with it throughout your all these years, I mean, some people can do it, right? But
Hmm.
when you actually, if you sat down and actually measured the percentage of the amount of people that can actually sustain their bodies to deliver a certain style or level of movement, it's really small,
Hmm.
right? I mean, you still got the Hong Tens, certain guys that are still able to do a lot of crazy movement and battle at high levels as they've aged, right? And still able to execute and deliver high level movement. But when you think of that, that's a really small percentage, right? Think
Right.
of those type of guys that you see, and
Yeah.
it's if from those generations, it's maybe one in a lot. I mean, okay, I couldn't give you a number, even though I'm trying to bring that up. Yeah, it's you can't, it's a really small percentage.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, like I'm assuming for a lot of people that as they age, their kind of style and their outlook on things and their priorities change and stuff. And that's kind of yeah something that I wanted to ask you about is over the years that you've been doing this, like how has your outlook on the dance changed over the years? And you can even talk about this too within your style or just the mental side of things.
Mm-hmm. The outlook on dance in general. I mean, I think you go through different phases, right? And I feel that breaking is such a dynamic dance and just such a unique thing that the way that we do our moves, the moves that we utilize, the things that we do, they're just so amazing to the average person that we kind of get stuck and caught up in that. Um, as time progresses, yeah, like you're saying, it's like you just you're not able to do certain things no more, right? It's like when you watch a young player in this game, whether it's boxing, whether it's basketball, and in the beginning phases, they have a certain amount of explosiveness to the game, and as you see, as they've aged throughout their careers, they become more defined and fine tuned in the way they play their craft. It's more almost like an art. They're smoother at it. They're more mature. Their form is, everything just changes. And I think that those are the things as the dance has gone on through my life. I feel like I've learned to appreciate different things with it,
Hmm.
right? And I think those are the things that have helped me stay consistent with what I'm doing for this long. But I think it's a thing about just expression in music always. And I think as dancers and as people that rely a lot on the movements and dynamics of the dance, we still got to remember that this is a dance first, and that's what I mean. You have to really look at it for what it is and how
Hmm.
it started, and you got to keep those not basics, but that essence of that in what it is today. So I think people got to focus on those things uh, to keep it going to future generations where we're able to be able to carry those things on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really important thing is carrying on that tradition and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
that that leads in quite nicely to the next thing that I wanted to talk about. You mentioned him, I think a few times in the earlier
Hmm.
session that we did.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mex and his sort of. Can you talk a little bit about yeah, just maybe your experiences with him and the legacy that he left and yeah, who he
Yeah. I
was.
mean, Max was special. Max was one of those guys that was one. He was a straight hip hop head. He was a purist. He himself was always just very honest with what he had done and how he learned his way into what he became. In terms of becoming very understanding of the culture and the essence of the culture. And then he realized how important community was. And he was a representation of that. He was a leader, a true leader, a visionary, and a very approachable person, very relatable. He could talk to anybody. And yeah, he would be a guy that I don't know. He was just to me, he was really a like a purist and just a community leader. He really led by example. He helped people out. He reached out to anybody that needed a hand. He would always give it, and he was very helpful to a lot of people. And he touched so many lives. And even when I, being as close as I was to him, as the years have gone, I've met so many different people and the impact that he had on their lives, or people that they tell me about their how they met him, or their relationships with him in terms of friendships and stuff like that throughout the years. And it's just it's reminds you of the person that he was, and how he carried himself, what he did, and what he was really about. And it's hard to sometimes think about it, because I feel like it's a hard situation with everything that happened. And it's definitely he's one of those people that believed in what I did and
Hmm.
really backed me 110%. And yeah, he's a great guy, a great person. And yeah, it's hard to come across people like that. And when you do, obviously, that you relate or you connect with people like that. And he was one of those people that always had your back. So I don't know, it's so many different things that I could say about him.
Yeah.
But yeah, he provided a lot. I mean, he was a visionary in terms of, when we say that, I think it's easy to say that word, but he really led with that, with his ideas and what he thought and he envisioned. I mean, when he gave Kid David a shirt, and the revenue from the shirt went to Kid David, that was the beginning of something, right? And then he made my shirt, and then he gave a shirt to another guy. That's because he believed that we have to be self-sustained, and to do that and to leave that kind of a mark in the scene, like that's what I mean with being a visionary, because that is the way out. That is the way of the future. That is the way to be self-sustained.
Hmm.
And I think a lot throughout the years, a lot of people have just gotten lost with some of the things, but he really saw certain things that could be possible, and he was really trying to, or he really made all of those things possible for a lot of us and achieved a lot of those things. But it's just part of the journey. So he really did a lot.
Yeah. I think the scene needs more, or the community needs more people like that. That are willing to have that passion for the culture and the community, but also, yeah, be
Hmm.
very focused on like community first, and building
Hmm.
our own things. And it, just hearing that, I didn't even know about that shirt sort of deal that they had, you guys had. But it reminds me
Hmm.
of, say, like in wrestling, a big part of how uh, independent wrestlers become self-sustaining is through
Yeah.
merchandise sales. And there's a specific like company that deals with a lot of the merchandise sales of a lot of these independent people. And
Hmm.
but yeah, it's like, I think these are the kinds of things that more people need to sort of like study and get deeper in. Is like, you know
Hmm.
people might not like it. It's like, oh, money is dirty, business is dirty, we want to keep it pure and just keep it partying and this kind of thing. But if you want
Yeah,
to have
but
a if you want to have something that's sustainable as a business, like, you got to start looking
mhm.
into it, and you got to think of it in some ways as a business. you know
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
still, you
yeah.
can
So yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's true. I hear you on that. Yeah. I mean, he was smart with that too. He
Yeah.
understood business as well. He was just a person that really studied and was very well rounded on many different things, and paid attention to a lot of different things, and
Hmm.
would be very curious and ask questions and find out.
Hmm.
And I mean, if you notice, a lot of b-boys, we don't ask questions. We're more timid, we're more quiet, or we just feel more that we're at a certain level that we don't need to ask questions.
Hmm.
The ego kind of gets in the way for a lot of us. We feel like we're the authority, but in reality, the people that sit down and ask the most questions and are curious about whether it's this, whether it's something else that's going to help this, those are the people that are able to do more
Hmm.
and grow more and do things like he did, because he
Yeah.
was able to venture out and really explore certain things that some of us aren't willing to take the time to do.
Yeah. But
you know.
he was one of the people that, he built a brand that was,
Hmm.
as far as I know, fairly successful. And he had, Outbreak, which still lives on through MG and out in Europe, and that's like one of the
Hmm.
best events that I've ever been to. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
a huge festival
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. MG is, yeah, like a student of Max, basically. Max took him under his wing, basically, and taught him all the things he knew.
Hmm.
So to see him carry on Max's vision out there has been good.
Hmm.
It's been cool to see because he's preserving what he saw and what inspired him, and he's taking it to the other side of the planet to give the community there something that inspired him and it has inspired many people
Yeah.
worldwide. Right? Even when it was here in the States, it was somewhere that it was something special for everybody. It was unique, and it was he was preserving a certain feeling of the events, the jam, where now when everything is we need everything to be around, but when everything's focused on big stage stuff, you lose a bit of the touch, right? So you still need to have those community events that are more grassroots
Hmm.
to give you that, and he was a representation of that.
Yeah. Like just from my personal experiences going to Outbreak, it was like from the moment you get there, you're like lining up, you can hear the music, and number one, he picked good DJs, he picked good venues,
Yeah,
he picked yeah, he thought about the whole atmosphere of like the whole experience. From the moment
yeah.
we walked in the door, it was like, oh man, this is something different, at least for us, you know.
Now, yeah, I mean that's what it was for everybody. It was about I mean, when you think about events and a lot of the events that impacted people's lives. I mean, I know that some other guys in his crew were at the Prime in '99. I mean, I was there, so I speak about that highly because it had that certain energy at that event that a lot of people uh, try to recreate, and it was just something that special for everybody that was there and witnessed it. That they walked out, all those people that were there, and there was a lot of people, and there was a lot of people that became community leaders, or people that stayed in the scene for long, or became influential figures in breaking. They were all at this event in '99, right?
Hmm.
And they all left and kind of like spread the word of what they experienced there. And then the events that came after were trying to preserve somewhat
Hmm.
the energy of what some of us felt, right? Not to say
Hmm.
that was like the ultimate event or whatever, but it was
Yeah.
just such an experience for those that were there that they walked away. I know a lot of us speak highly of that moment. It's
Hmm.
like, oh, Miguel's called out Kenny and Kenny. It was just it was East versus West, came out versus Flow, and like all this stuff going on, and
Yeah.
just the energy and all the battles, the ciphers, the culture, everything that was there, the music. I mean, it was everything. And I mean, when you look at Outbreak, it's about the vibe, right? It's about when you walk in, the experience, the lights. It's not too bright. It's like
Yeah.
the music, everything matters, and attention to detail again. Being aware of creating an atmosphere that's going to make you feel something that you normally don't feel at your average event, right?
Yeah, and I think that's another thing too. Just talking about growing the community and stuff like that. A
Hmm.
lot of times events can be very like dancer focused, and
Hmm.
like they think about the dancer's experience, but they don't think about
Hmm.
say like general public. But when I went to like Outbreak in the U.S. and Outbreak in Europe, they
Hmm.
really thought about that kind of thing of like there's like uh they had artwork that was being done like live painting, and
Hmm.
at in Europe they had like basketball courts, and there's like beanbag seat sort of things all over the place for people to sit.
Yeah.
There's food, there's a ton of food, uh all kinds of things happening at the same time. So like if you didn't want to watch say like prelims, you can go and do something else, or there's just space
Yeah.
that you can go and like hang
Yeah.
out. There's a ton of different people from all over the place, and even like
Yeah.
with
You can see
Outbreak,
more.
I think even both of them, Outbreak Europe and US, when it was still going, like
Yeah.
there was kind of like the main hotel where everyone would be, and that led to a lot of connections, like either
True.
international or even from my experience, it was like that's where like the Canadian scene, like really east and the west coast, we really connected
Hmm.
was through one of the experiences was at Outbreak. And
Wow. Yeah.
oh, it was
Like, oh, you're here. I'm here too. Like,
yeah, exactly,
and that's how
right.
you connect with people.
Yeah,
That's
and
cool,
it just
man.
makes all these connections, and not just like like international connections and stuff like that. So those kind of things are really
That's true.
important, I think.
Yeah, you got to have an atmosphere outside of just the event and provide a place where people can actually talk. Because yeah, you're gonna dance for a bit. I mean, you can't dance for 12 straight hours. You can't dance
Exactly.
for 9 straight hours. You need to have those little breaks. So
Yeah.
if you create the atmosphere, the environment where people can connect and just chop it up and
Hmm.
network, then that's dope too. Because that's how a lot of things happen for a lot of people. But yeah, I mean, in terms of instead of going to events and all day and you're watching 500 prelim competitors, and then you watch the tournament and then you just walk out and leave. That defeats the whole purpose because this movement, this dance, this culture is not built on just the competition side of it, even though it's a good part of it and a big aspect of it.
Hmm.
You still got to experience this as a culture and for what it is. So if you're providing a space outside of that tournament environment that you're having at your event where people can sit down and connect and talk or just network, that they're gonna walk away with a different experience. But if you just have seating where they're just gonna sit all day and watch the tournament, somebody that experiences an event where you can sit down and actually meet people is going to walk away with a different feeling than the person that probably just sat and watched moves all day.
Yeah, yeah. I think, you know, some of the best events that I've ever been to were ones where you have options for what you can do,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
even as a dancer, like you said, you don't want to dance all day. You can't dance all day, and sometimes you just want to go and chill, and you want to chat, you want to catch up with some people that you haven't seen in a while, or you met some new person, maybe you were dancing together, but afterwards you want to be able to talk and stuff like that, or yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of thing is really important. I think more people need to consider that sort of stuff. I know not everybody has the budget for this
Of
kind
course.
of
Yeah.
things,
No,
but
everybody does what they can, and that's why I said it's not like one event was all like what let's talk about the experience from the Prime in Miami. That was just my experience, and a lot of people speak highly of it, right? That's not to say
mhm,
that that's like, oh, it has to be that way.
yeah,
Everybody does what they can and then
yeah,
what's possible. We're just saying, at least what I want to say or the message I want to relay is that, yeah, one side of our community is taking off and it's great, and it needs to keep pushing that way. Nothing. I don't think there needs to be. Um, we don't need to give one thing up or the other.
yeah,
I think that both can coexist, right?
yeah,
I
for
just
sure.
think that people have to remember that we do need both,
Yeah,
and don't forget, right? It's just
yeah,
that's important too.
yeah. Um, I think if you look at where breaking started and where it's at now, I think it's you can't really say that it's going in a negative direction. There's little tweaks and maybe whatever, it can always be better, but you know
Hmm.
I think in general it's going in a pretty positive way, and it's come a long way.
Yeah, it's come a long way, man. It's still growing. It's still developing. I
Yeah,
think just people, as being a part of the dance community, we just gotta make sure we're involved to help people carry this on in a good way.
hmm, yeah. Well, I think that's a good spot to finish up. Uh, Roxrite, really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you're a very busy guy, and
Yeah,
but really appreciate it, and I really appreciate everyone who's listening and watching. Uh, it's great to have your support, and hopefully we can do this again sometime and
yeah, I'm down. Thank you for
doing
having
some
me.
other stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Glad we could make it happen. I'm a little tired today, but
Yeah,
glad we made it and it went down. Because I was like, last time the flow was good. So
yeah, yeah,
thanks again for having me,
yeah.
and I hope we can connect again.
If people want to follow you, or follow your journey or whatever, are there any ways that they can
Hmm.
do that?
Yeah, I mean, you can go on I have my YouTube channel, Roxrite. You can check out through my Instagram here and there. Also, my website, roxriterepresents.com. Sometimes I post articles or just certain things about my career on there, or just
Cool.
general, sometimes opinions.
Nice.
But yeah, you can check it out there. And sometimes I have products for sale, some
Nice.
merch.
Nice.
But yeah, if you guys have the time, check it out.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. Well, again, really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll do it again sometime. All right,
Sounds
everybody.
good, man.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.